Has suggested that the then Meghan Markle likely spent time with Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein.
Nasty, and says he feels sorry for Prince Harry because his wife is a lot to deal with.
It happened in an instant. One of those moments you almost think you imagined until the internet starts exploding. Meghan Markle, once the polished duchess who seemed untouchable, suddenly looked like she'd lost every ounce of control she'd spent years fighting to protect. You've probably seen the clip by now. Colin Jost standing under the blinding Saturday Night Live lights, smirking just before he dropped a line so savage, so unexpected, that Meghan reportedly screamed in sheer panic when she realized what was about to happen. And no, this wasn't some recycled gossip or tired old tabloid headline. This time, he went straight for the jugular, calling out the secret yacht photos Meghan thought she'd buried forever, the images that had been whispered about in online rabbit holes and private forums for years. Fuzzy snapshots of a woman who looked exactly like her, lounging on a billionaire's deck with a glass of rose, long before she ever slid into royal life. For a split second, the audience roared with laughter. But behind the scenes, insiders say Meghan was anything but amused. She was so furious, so blindsided, she allegedly slammed her phone down so hard it cracked the case. Because this wasn't just an offhand punchline, it was about the myth she spent a lifetime curating, now collapsing in real time on live television. And once the clip went viral, there was no pulling it back. But that wasn't the only secret creeping back to the surface. Because here's the thing, this yacht story has always lingered in the shadows. The rumors first trickled out on obscure message boards, blurry photos surfacing on gossip blogs no mainstream outlet dared to touch. For years, it was just speculation, an internet campfire tale people whispered about late at night. But the timing of Colin's joke changed everything. He didn't just repeat a rumor, he packaged it in a way that made the world laugh. And once people start laughing, the topic stops being taboo, becomes irresistible. Let's rewind to the photos themselves. Grainy, sunlit images taken from just far enough away to give plausible deniability, but close enough to stir up a frenzy. A yacht anchored off a Mediterranean coast, champagne glasses glinting, a cluster of well-connected men in pressed linen shirts. And in the middle of the frame, a woman in designer swimwear, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. Reddit sleuths have spent years dissecting those photos, cross-referencing jewelry, comparing body language, even analyzing the angle of the sun to figure out exactly when they were taken. Didn't take long before TikTok creators jumped in, adding side-by-side shots of Meghan in her early Suits days. And the resemblance was uncanny enough to make even casual viewers pause. The photos didn't look like an accidental spring break snapshot. They looked like a moment from a life Meghan never wanted the world to see. And that's where the story gets fascinating. Because while Meghan has always claimed she met Prince Harry through a mutual friend, these images suggested she was already mingling in the same circles long before their supposed first date. The narrative of the American outsider stumbling into the royal fairy tale suddenly looked a lot less spontaneous, and a lot more strategic. But the deeper cut isn't about whether she spent time on yachts. Plenty of young actresses find themselves in luxurious settings, chasing opportunities. The scandal is in how rigorously those images were erased, how desperately her team worked to control the narrative, and how any reference to them sparked instant legal threats. Because if there's nothing to hide, why spend so much energy scrubbing it all away? After Colin's punchline hit the airwaves, the internet went into overdrive. Memes popped up faster than her PR team could respond. Photos overlaid with captions like, "Manifesting my next yacht invite," and "From suits to deck chairs." The hashtags started trending, and within hours, even outlets that once treated Meghan like a misunderstood icon started tiptoeing into the topic. The next morning, a UK tabloid ran a headline that simply read, "Busted, Meghan's secret life returns." And for the first time, even her most loyal defenders were at a loss. Normally, Meghan's response team would fire back instantly. A strongly worded denial, a statement about misogyny, a reminder of her philanthropy. But this time, there was silence. And silence is never neutral. It's an admission of vulnerability. One source close to a Hollywood publicist claimed Meghan was so enraged she was calling contacts all night, demanding someone shut this down. But shutting it down was impossible, because the story wasn't confined to gossip sites anymore. It had broken into mainstream pop culture. Punchline had turned into a viral phenomenon, and every time someone laughed, the myth of her spotless rise cracked a little more. Behind the scenes, this meltdown had collateral damage. Insiders say Harry was stunned. He's always harbored a visceral hatred of the press, and seeing his wife transformed into a meme was reportedly the final straw in what some say has become a long, quiet estrangement from Hollywood's glossy circles. One friend of the couple told a journalist, "Harry doesn't know who to trust anymore. Every time they think they've escaped the headlines, something uglier pops up." That's the irony here. Meghan built her image on the idea of resilience, of overcoming adversity. But the moment the public realized the adversity might not be the whole story, the entire foundation started to look brittle. And while she retreated behind Montecito's gated walls, the internet kept digging. Comment sections erupted with people sharing old stories about Meghan's early days in Hollywood. Tales of her relentless networking, her hunger to climb any ladder within reach. People remembered how her first marriage had ended quietly, how her oldest friendships had evaporated. In the court of public opinion, each of those anecdotes became another puzzle piece, another reason to question the polished narrative she'd sold to millions. But here's the most fascinating part. This scandal wasn't really about yachts or even about Meghan herself. It was about the disconnect between image and reality. In a world where everyone curates their personal brand, Meghan had simply done it better, and more aggressively, than almost anyone else. For years it worked. She was the sympathetic Duchess, the woman who'd endured everything from racism to palace cruelty. But the yacht photos, resurfacing in the middle of a comedy sketch, shattered the illusion in a way no tabloid exposé ever could. That's the power of ridicule. When people mock you, they take away your gravitas. And once you become a punchline, you can't climb back onto the pedestal. You can't spin a meme into an injustice. You can't sue away a viral joke. And for Meghan, who built an empire on carefully controlled storytelling, that was the real nightmare. While this was playing out, something else started happening. Hollywood insiders began quietly distancing themselves. Studios that once considered her for brand partnerships pulled back. Event organizers stopped returning calls. Even the speaking engagements, once a reliable source of income and publicity, started drying up. One executive summed it up bluntly. "She's just too unpredictable now. No one wants to take the risk." And what about Harry? Friends say he's been spiraling. He gave up everything for this life. His family, his country, his military ties. And now, watching Meghan's past become the internet's favorite obsession, he's allegedly retreating further into himself. He doesn't know how to protect her anymore, or even if it's still possible. 'Cause this isn't just about negative headlines. It's about an entire culture deciding they've had enough of the fairy tale. People close to the couple claim Meghan still believes she can control the narrative. That one day, a sympathetic documentary or a high-profile interview will flip public opinion again. But privately, her team knows it's never going back to the way it was. 'Cause no matter how much she talks about empowerment, people have seen the receipts. They've watched the timelines fracture, the stories contradict, the facade crumble. And they're not willing to forget. At the end of the day, this isn't about shaming someone for their past. Everyone has a history, a collection of mistakes and choices that don't fit neatly into the Instagram version of life. What makes Meghan's story so explosive is the refusal to own any of it. The relentless erasure. The attacks on anyone who dares to remember. The transformation of every critic into a villain. Every question into an act of cruelty. 'Cause here's the truth. If you build a brand on transparency, you can survive almost anything. But if you build it on curation and secrecy, the moment someone finds a crack, the whole thing caves in. And that's exactly what we're seeing play out right now. One SNL joke, one set of old photos, and an entire persona undone. Even now, weeks after Colin Jost's punchline echoed across living rooms and phone screens, the ripple effects haven't stopped. New images are rumored to be surfacing. Investigators are trawling old archives, hoping to find more evidence. And every day Meghan stays silent, the curiosity grows. Some say this will pass, that eventually the internet will move on to the next controversy. Maybe. But it's hard to unsee the spectacle of a woman who thought she'd outgrown her past, only to watch it crawl back into the spotlight, more powerful than any PR campaign. Harder still to ignore the growing realization that the story we were sold, the plucky actress turned victim turned duchess, was never quite as simple as we were told. And maybe that's the biggest lesson in all of this. In an age where everyone's image is a product, authenticity isn't just a virtue, it's the only insurance policy you have. Because when the cameras turn off, when the carefully filtered posts stop, the truth doesn't vanish. It waits. And eventually, it always finds its way to the surface. So as Meghan grapples with a crisis she can't control, and Harry stands by, powerless to stop the tidal wave, the rest of the world is left to watch, to dissect, to wonder how the most meticulously curated royal brand of the modern era unraveled because of a single smirking joke on a Saturday night stage. Because when you run from your past, it doesn't just disappear. It waits for the moment you least expect, when the cameras are rolling, the lights are bright, and your guard is down. Then it steps into the spotlight. And it never leaves. And yet, even as the dust starts to settle, a bigger question looms over this entire saga. Was this always inevitable? Was Meghan Markle's story destined to collapse under its own weight because it relied so heavily on an illusion of perfection? In the beginning, people were eager to believe in the fairy tale. The actress who'd faced rejection and racism, the outsider who'd married into an ancient institution and tried to modernize it from the inside. There was something irresistible about that narrative. Felt fresh, hopeful, a sign that even the most rigid systems could evolve. But as time passed, cracks began to show. It wasn't just the yacht photos or the rumors of carefully staged paparazzi shoots, or the anonymous tips about how friendships and business partnerships often ended in silence and sealed NDAs. It was the growing sense that the woman behind the polished speeches and curated podcasts was playing a role more complicated than anyone realized. A role that demanded constant rewriting of her own backstory, constant vigilance to keep inconvenient truths from slipping through the seams. And here's the thing, most people could forgive a messy past. In fact, it would have made her more relatable if Meghan had simply acknowledged that she'd been ambitious, that she'd navigated the treacherous waters of Hollywood with calculated determination, that she'd reinvented herself to survive. People would have understood. They might have even admired it. After all, who among us hasn't tried to improve our circumstances, to level up, to leave behind the parts of ourselves that feel small or inadequate? But instead, any time the past threatened to surface, the response was denial, deflection, or accusation. Critics were labeled bigots, misogynists, or trolls. Questions were reframed as attacks. And the story of a complicated, flawed, driven woman became the story of a flawless victim, persecuted by everyone who didn't fall in line. That's the real reason the Colin Jost joke was such a tipping point. It wasn't just funny. It was true enough that it couldn't be dismissed with a press release. Behind palace gates and Montecito mansions, insiders say Meghan's fury over the SNL moment has turned into something darker, a kind of obsession. She allegedly spent weeks trying to track down exactly how those photos resurfaced and who might have leaked them to comedy writers. Some claim she believes it was an intentional sabotage campaign designed to humiliate her at the very moment she was plotting her next big rebrand. Whether that's true or not, it says a lot about how brittle her sense of control has become. Meanwhile, Harry is said to be torn between conflicting instincts, protecting his wife and finally confronting the possibility that not everything she's told him matches reality. Those close to the couple have described tense arguments, late-night phone calls to crisis PR strategists, and a growing sense of isolation. Because when you're famous, there's nowhere to hide from the internet. The memes are relentless. The headlines are merciless, and no amount of selective storytelling can outpace a viral clip once it takes on a life of its own.